And welcome to a special Sweet 16 edition of the Upstate Orange podcast on a Sunday, March 24th, 2013, coming at you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. The Orange is heading back east to the Sweet 16 in Washington, D.C. We'll recap Syracuse's first two tournament games, preview the road ahead, and talk about all the madness from the first weekend of the 2013 NCAA tournament. I'm Jim Sinicropi, and my partner Matt Verkey's not with us tonight, not able to make it. I personally think it's because his bracket was busted by New Mexico. And I remember last week on our selection show, he had New Mexico in the Final Four. So I think that might be why he bowed out tonight. But we do have, via telephone, on spring break in Clearwater Beach, Florida, our resident college hoops guru, Brad Connor. Good evening, Brad.
Hey, Jim.
How's the weather down there?
A lot better than it is back north. I know that.
Well, I'm heading down that way too next week to Disney World, so maybe we can cross paths in the sky or something. But how are your brackets holding up?
Not too bad. I lost Gonzaga out of the final 8, but I'm hanging tough in the final 4, so I'm doing okay. It's fortunate I didn't pick too much Big East, because if I did, that would have come back to haunt me. I
got Marquette going deep in one. I, of course, got Syracuse winning it all in one. I mean, I got Marquette in the final game. And I did have a couple of losses, but no Final Four teams yet. And most of my Elite 8 teams. One of my brackets, I had Georgetown. But that's okay. That was fine to see them lose to Florida Gulf Coast. No problem there.
Yeah, if there's one bracket buster I'm not sure I minded was seeing Georgetown lose in the first round.
Now, how have you been taking the tournament this year? Me personally, always root hardcore for every single Big East team, even UConn and even Georgetown. And I'm still doing that this year to some extent, but not as hard. But I tell you, I was rooting for Kansas over North Carolina today, and I'll be rooting for Duke to lose later tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it a couple weeks ago. I don't see us ever being passionate ACC fans. In past years, I've been very much motivated to see the Big East do well, and this year it's not as much. And I guess it's just there's not as much to prove. I think in the past couple of years, it's always been, all right, the ACC, rated the Big East, and so the Big East has to, stick it to the ACC, and there's always been that kind of implicit rivalry, I think. And this year, it doesn't mean as much anymore.
Yeah, I agree. It was more of, having to stand up for ourselves, being the underdog as the Big East, and then always, even when we had a better product on the court, we still had to go above and beyond to kind of prove it. And now we're, sleeping with the devil. But it's going to be an interesting dynamic. I think I'm going to root for the new Big East teams, the Catholic 7, which is going to be the Big East. I think I'm going to root for them to do well and follow them. And I don't see myself ever hoping for Carolina or Duke to do anything in the tournament. I was happy when NC State lost, earlier this week. But a lot to talk about over the next hour alongside our producer Jeremy Hunt in the booth running the board. The Upstate Orange podcast is brought to you by Madej Maris and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys. If you've been injured and deserve compensation, call the Finger Lakes Personal Injury Hotline at 315-568-0911. You're a name at Madej Maris and Ricky, not just a number on a folder. So the personal injury hotline again, 315-568-0911. And also by Generations Bank. Generations of service for over 140 years. Visit them online at mygenbank.com and check out their new mobile banking app. And Newark Pilots Baseball season ticket package is now available for the 2013 season at the gorgeous Colburn Park. Visit newarkpilots.com for more information. So here we are back in the Sweet 16 for the fourth time in the last 5 years, which is a pretty impressive run for Syracuse basketball. And before that, Brad, we were coming off of 2 NIT bids. So certainly like the Sweet 16 a lot better than the NIT. In 4 out of the last 5 years, you'll be hard pressed to find any other school that's gone 4 out of the last 5.
Well, I think even if you look back at Syracuse's history, I didn't do the research today, but this is one of the best stretches in terms of tournament play. I think this program's had since Boeheim's been there. Well, obviously even prior to then, but even in the '80s, they would intersperse some Sweet 16 runs with a couple of second-round losses. Even some of their best teams ended up losing second-round games and even first-round games in some years. And this is a real historic stretch for Syracuse, I think.
And I agree, and I think that's why we've been kind of taking it for granted being in the top 5 the past few years. And this year we have had little difficulties, but we're right back in the Sweet 16. We'll talk about the games, but, it worked out really great for Syracuse. I don't know why Seth Davis picked Montana, but that was about as easy as a first-round game as you could get. Of all the 13 seeds, I think that was the easiest one to play. And then we go ahead and play, a pretty much terrible Cal team and hold on to beat them. We didn't play very well either. Although I shouldn't say that. We played good defensively. But I just think we had a pretty easy road to the Sweet 16, and now guess what? It's time to play Indiana, and that's kind of the matchup we've been kind of talking about a little bit on and off this year, and it's kind of just, we're just a few hours from learning that that's going to happen on Thursday. But do you agree, Brad, with the draw? Probably one of the easiest draws for a 4 seed, those 2 games.
Yeah, we always try and assess before the tournament who's got the easiest road, who has the toughest road. And, upsets happen and things shake out. And, I didn't see Cal beating UNLV. I thought UNLV would have been a tougher test for Syracuse. I remember when it came out, and there's somebody I heard saying that Cal would have presented an easier chance for Syracuse because they just don't shoot the three-point ball very well, and those types of teams tend to be the ones that give Syracuse fits if you get hot from 3, and they just didn't have three-point shooters. And you could see that last night. They didn't really have any way to attack the zone, and they shaded the one guy, Crab, I guess, was the shooter, and they were able to pretty well shut him down. And without him, they had nothing. And
Solomon.
The defense were in game offensively, especially the second half, and just a free throw shooting contest. Which in the tournament you get those because in the Big East, they're going to let a lot of those calls go, and in the tournament sometimes you get referees that call them, and that's what we saw last night. And it ended up being a free throw shooting contest, which fortunately Cal shot fewer free throws than Syracuse did because they didn't shoot it great.
Yeah, and we normally don't want to be in a free throw shooting contest, but on paper you think we would. I find it funny. It seems like the announcers keep saying that Brandon Trish is a 76% free throw shooter, but he hasn't made 2 free throws in a row since January, so I don't know how his percentage can still be that high because it's kind of laughable for a guy who we know is a great free throw shooter. He can't knock down 2.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember back to last year and how good a free throw shooter he was up until just probably the very tail end of last season. And this year, you're absolutely right, Jim. I don't remember him being a guy we can count on from the free throw line at all this season, really. Yeah,
Baikita's more reliable in the postseason at least than Trish. And speaking to that, Michael Carter-Williams as well. He was 4 for 9 against Cal from the line, and 0 for 1 against Montana from the line. So that's 4 for 10. That's 40% for this tournament from our point guard, and he's going to have to do better. Look, we got by Cal with poor free throw shooting and generally poor offensive performance, but the competition is going to get a little more stiff, and we're going to need Carter-Williams to make some key free throws down the stretch, certainly, and Trish, both of our guards.
Well, I think too. I mean, what Syracuse is doing, and it's been great in this postseason, is attacking the basket instead of standing outside the perimeter and jacking up threes, which hurt them in the last probably 5 or 6 games of the regular season. And having done that now in the tournament, one way that they can really put pressure on Syracuse is when Carter Williams drives to the basket, you just foul the guy. Just give him a hard foul, send it to the line. He's going to make 1 or 2. If I'm a defense, I take my chances with that.
Yeah, whole hack-a-shack with our backcourt. That's a little disconcerting. But we know those guys can make them, and really at this point we can throw everything out the window, and every game is going to be a fight, and hopefully these guys can step up when it matters most. So
and they've been building up to this too. I mean, you could argue a team like this, it's a long season. They sort of play hard, every single game during the course of the season. But I think it's a team that's gelling now more so than you saw back in February. Maybe they're peaking, you could argue. Maybe not. Maybe they peaked early and sort of lulled. But I think they're playing as well now as they have at any point during the season. I think guys are really solidified in their role. I think they really know what they can or can't do. I don't see them taking too many bad shots anymore, really.
Yeah, I agree.
They did, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I'm encouraged by that, and I think that's going to be critical against a team like Indiana.
Yeah, and I do like our matchup with Indiana. I like our matchup with just about anybody with our zone. I think the zone's going to give Indiana a lot of trouble. It's just a matter of can we score 60 points. And, Sutherland hasn't had a real breakout game yet. Trish certainly hasn't, and he's kind of my the one candidate I would least put up for have a big breakout game. But it would be nice if he did, to account for some of that scoring. Now, one guy who is been just fantastic, of course, is CJ Fair. And let's look at his lines in that Montana game. He took over right from the start, ended up with 13 points. He only played 22 minutes. When's the last time CJ's only played 22 minutes in a game for us? So that was kind of nice to get him off to an easy start. But we needed him for 39 minutes against Cal because we just couldn't put them away. And he, of course, contributed 18 points, 6 rebounds. And, he had a block. He had a really nice block on that fast break, a couple of steals. Not one of his best nights, 6 for 14 shooting, but overall that guy just makes us go. And the most positive point on our roster heading forward.
Yeah, you could see what they were doing from the very beginning. I think it was the first possession. They got him the ball in the right wing, and he just attacks, going to the left side and throwing up the one-handed left hook that he has, and that was the idea from the beginning: is attack with CJ Fair, get him into the lane, and it must have been a nice scouting job by the assistants because they really figured out that Cal was vulnerable with that, and he got a couple of nice looks early, opened things up a little bit, and then they play him to drive a little bit, and then it sags, and they give him a chance to shoot the outside jumper, the mid-range jumper, and he made a three-pointer, and Sutherland had a couple of threes, and it really just loosens things up when you can get guys jumping in and out of the lane, and that's the best thing that we can see out of CJ Fair is to be that mid-range guy and give Sutherland room to operate on the outside.
Yeah, and he's another guy that's stretching that defense because we know that Carter Williams has pretty much abandoned the shot for the most part, and so you have Trish, Sutherland, and now Fair, a third guy that you have to respect, especially when he's on the corner. That corner 3 shot for him, that rainbow, is just a beautiful thing. So that should open things up, like you say, for the guards to get into the lane and for guys like Baikita to get some easy layups.
Yeah, Baikita double figures again last night. I mean, he's getting easy shots. He's catching the ball on the pick and roll off the high screen, and like we said, making free throws and 7 rebounds last night. I mean, they got 14 points, 12 rebounds combined from Keita and Christmas last night. I would take that every night if we could get that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing that Keita brings to the table is intensity, a little toughness, and focus. Guys, are anybody more focused out there? So these are all traits that we questioned with this team down the stretch of the regular season, some of their focus and some of their mental toughness. And Keita, brings it every second he's on the court. So in a way, he's go ahead.
Well, we were talking about leadership with this team, and that was a void here, 3 or 4 weeks ago. I almost see Baikita stepping up as a leader in this team. I mean, you're never going to see a center. It's a guy that's going to kind of lead you in the battle, but I see the guys kind of rallying around him, and really because he's had such a nice stretch of 5 or 6 games here, I really see him as kind of stepping out of his shell and rallying the guys a little bit that didn't exist a month ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess Christmas did have a little bit of a tough time last night catching Boeheim's ire, both nights really. Under 20 minutes. But overall, I like the way he's playing. I like the intensity. It's more mental mistakes with him being in the wrong place at the wrong time in the zone and being forced to commit a foul. Sometimes I think we were trying to go to him, and he just doesn't. We can't go to him offensively. He's going to score his points in transition, and on putbacks, and wide open dunks. But overall,
Yeah,
I like the way he's playing. I like the way Christmas is playing right now.
Yeah, he's giving good minutes. You're right. He's never going to be a guy that they're going to pound the ball down to, and he's going to make a move. I think he's got decent moves offensively, but I think he's too unpolished to be able to consistently go to him and expect him to do good things with the basketball. But it's the defense that I think he's always had an issue with. And I think we always underestimate the necessity of the positioning of that inside guy, the center of the 2-3, and they've always developed guys that can play that and play that well and really shut down the interior, and that's why Coleman started and played 2 minutes and came out, and that's why Fab Melo did the same thing 2 years ago, and that's why Christmas did that last year, and he's doing it again. And I think Keita's just a smarter player, and he just understands the principles of what has to happen inside. You can't go to him for 40 minutes because he's just limited offensively, but I don't think you lose anything when you put Keita in and take Christmas out. And in fact, I think you probably gain more in terms of just consistency.
Yep, yeah, and a great block shot by Christmas too last night.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty. So well, since we were kind of run down the roster here, I guess talk a little bit about Michael Carter-Williams. We touched on the free throw shooting, but some really bad decisions again last night against Cal. Overall, I'm at peace with Michael Carter-Williams. He's taking the ball to the hole more. He's not shooting or forcing up three-pointers. He may take one, an open shot here or there. But overall, I'm pleased with him, except for he keeps leaving his feet. He keeps making untimely turnovers. And I still don't like the way he contests the other team's three-point shooters. But, I guess those are things that we can't necessarily hope are going to change going forward. The not shooting the threes, that's kind of a decision you can make, but not making turnovers in the heat of the battle, that's something that comes with experience, and we got to remember this kid's still a sophomore. So, going forward, I think what we see is what we get with Michael Carter-Williams, and I'm hoping, Brad, that it's more of his upside than the downside, because we're going to need our point guard to play great from here on out.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I keep telling myself and hoping that I see is every game that he plays, particularly in the tournament, teaches him a little bit more about how to play and what's needed from him at the point guard spot. And especially when you get into the tournament and guard play becomes so much more important in protecting the ball and limiting turnovers. And I've seen less of him trying to make the fancy play or make the highlight reel, and more just trying to make fundamental passes. I've seen him make some great passes, some great decisions, but yeah, occasionally you see him make the dumb ones, and we sort of saw that with Scoop last couple of years. But it's the leaving the feet. You're absolutely right, Jim. That's the part. That happens to him. It used to happen to him 4 or 5 times a game. Now it still happens 2 or 3 times, and every time he leaves his feet, you sort of shudder a little bit. And half the time it works out, and half the time he just goes out of bounds or goes into somebody else's hands. It's frustrating, but yeah, you're right. It's sort of what we're stuck with at this point. And if he sticks around for another year, it might get better, and you hope that it does, because it's not going to get better if he gets to the NBA. What he's done is nice. Is he's cut down on the three-point shooting. He shot a bad one last night. As soon as it left his hands, you knew it was not gonna. It was nowhere going to be close. And one thing that I had hoped that before this tournament started, if I was his coach, what I would have done was shown him video of 1996 and shown him what Lazarus Sims provided to this team, and showed him how effective a point guard can be without ever shooting the basketball. And that would be the prototype for Michael Carter-Williams at this stage. If he can kind of channel Lazarus Sims' sort of performance and approach to the game, he would be that much more effective, and this team would be that much more successful, I think.
Channel Lazarus Sims. Well, that wouldn't be a bad thing. Channel little Lazarus Sims.
Yeah.
2 other guys we didn't talk about, but are definitely key role players going forward, is seeing they're our only guys off the bench besides Keita. Jeremy Grant and Cooney. Grant's seemed to digress a little bit, but it's just kind of the Boeheim way with some freshmen. He gives them a taste early on, and then he has a little tighter leash as the season goes forward. We all thought Grant was just great when he was getting 12, 14 minutes to show what he can do. Now in spot duty, not so much. It's difficult to kind of unleash his talents, but I'm never too worried when he's on the court. I think we lose a little bit in the zone, the tightness of the zone, but we gain in defense at the rim. And if Sutherland's going to keep picking up fouls, we're going to need Grant.
Yeah, his athleticism, we never question that. And his rebounding, he rebounded great against Montana, as I remember. 8 rebounds, I think. He obviously didn't play much last night, but I think when he's in there, the rebounding is noticeably better. But you obviously lose a lot offensively when you have him in and Sutherland out. And Sutherland got in foul trouble last night, and that was a real problem. It almost felt like the offense was stagnating a little bit. And so if it's a 1-for-1 Grant for Sutherland, then I think we really struggle when Sutherland's not in the game, just in terms of offensive flow.
Yeah. And that's been clear the past couple of games when Sutherland's had to come out because of foul trouble, and we've gone into a bit of a slide, in the second half. So,
I worry about that going forward. Sutherland's gonna play better defense and not do as much reaching. I think he likes to get a lot of steals and thinks he's be able to rip the ball out more.
He slaps at the shit. He's in good defensive position sometimes, but then he brings his arm down on the shooter. Inside the lane, and that's a key thing Boeheim teaches. Stand there with your arm straight up in the air and make him make the shot. Don't bail him out with a foul. And that's some of the calls on Sutherland were a little bit questionable, but nonetheless, we need him on the court 36 minutes. So hopefully he stays away from the fouls. Now our other sub, Trevor Cooney. When he's on the court, I like him to spell our guys, but I wouldn't even care if he didn't shoot. I think he's fine defensively, but again, he didn't get a shot off last night. Of course, he only played 1 minute because Boeheim pulled him when he left. Let Crab hit the 27-foot 3-pointer. But the other night he was 1 for 4 from 3. He played okay against Montana, but I just don't want to see him come in and try to be a hero. Just come in and give us 5-6 minutes a game. But boy, would you have covered? How can you get mad at the Cooney for not getting out on that shooter on that shot? He was at the hash mark, and Boeheim yanked him.
I don't think that. It would have been hard to think that was Cooney's fault. That he just. When you're in there for 1 minute, you're trying to get a feel for the game still, and the fact that you're guarding a guy at the 3-point line, and he steps 6 feet beyond it, and nails one. Yeah, hard to blame Cooney on that one.
Yeah, but that was it for him. He didn't play another minute, boy. Coach Boeheim, works in mysterious ways. I'll defer to him on that one.
And I'd be shocked to see Cooney against Indiana unless you saw either Trish or Carter Williams either get in foul trouble or get really, really tired, because and we've seen it with Boeheim forever that the longer it goes and the tougher the spots are, his rotation tightens even more.
Right.
You can debate the merits of that, but it's something we've always seen. So I'd be shocked. The same thing last year. We never saw Carter Williams in the tournament for a single minute, and there were times where he could have come in and spelled Scoop and those guys, and he just never did. And for the same reason, I don't expect to see Cooney against Indiana at all.
Yeah, well, Indiana, a lot of pressure. That's a tall order for Carter Williams and Trish to both play 40 minutes. But you're right. If he is, it will be because of foul trouble and maybe some spot duty here or there. So, and I think the same thing with Grant. I think you're right, Brad. They're going to stick with. We're going to have 6. Christmas and Keita, and then barring foul trouble, everybody else better sleep well the night before. So Indiana's next. I think they're going to struggle with their zone. It's something they don't see. Zeller's been struggling, in general, for the past, month. I'd say he hasn't been very consistent. Oladipo is a one-on-one type of guy. I think they're going to have trouble with this zone, and I think if we can score 60 points, I think we're going to beat Indiana in advance. I think it's more about our offense than Indiana.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Indiana, I think, likes to get up and down, but they've got some good defenders, and I think if they can prevent them from shooting the 3, I think Indiana's a decent 3-point shooting team, and some of those guys can get off from 3, and you got to prevent Oladipo, Jordan Halls, those guys that can shoot a three pretty well. They have to prevent that from happening and get out on those shooters. Zeller, you're right, didn't play a great game today. Temple does a nice job defensively, but I think they're a team that can be beaten. I think they'll struggle with the zone because you're right, they don't see it very often. The unfortunate thing is they've got 4 days to prepare for it. It would have been nice if they had just come off a 1-day rest.
And Tom Crean, former Marquette coach, has seen it multiple times in his days with Marquette.
Sure. And at some level you have to adjust to what you're presented with offensively. That if his Marquette teams maybe could deal with it better than this Indiana team, and this Indiana team might not be set up to play that way. But it's 40 minutes. We'll see if they can do it. Indiana looked very vulnerable today against Temple, and we know Temple. And Temple beat Syracuse, and they're not a great team, but they're a good team. And Khalif Wyatt's a great player, but beyond Khalif Wyatt, they didn't have much of anything today. And even then, they still took Indiana down to the wire, and probably could have won that game were it not for some unlucky plays and some questionable calls down the end.
Yeah, that's how I feel. And remember, we think of Indiana as this traditional power. They haven't been here in a long time. They have been rebuilding their program for the better part of this decade. And, so they're the team. They may be the number 1 ranked team in the country and the number 1 seed. But, I almost feel like they need it more than we do for their program. And I really feel good about this game. I felt really comfortable about the Cal game. And something about this game, I feel good about it. Now, I don't necessarily feel good about, the next round, maybe coming up against Marquette again, or potentially, right now Miami, Illinois are playing it Sunday night, and so then the winner, they'll play Marquette. But for now, I like our chances against Indiana to advance to the Elite Eight. What would you? How would you handicap this one?
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It feels like I almost should be more nervous about this game than I am right now. I remember being a lot more nervous last year about the Wisconsin game, and for good reason, because that was a bloodbath, that game. But I feel like Indiana could potentially go into this game a lot tighter than Syracuse can. I think Syracuse will be a lot looser going into it. I think there are a lot of expectations on this Indiana team to succeed and get to the Final Four and been number 1 for a good portion of the season. So I think that they feel it's Final Four or bust, probably. That Syracuse, I think they're playing. They in some ways kind of feel like they're playing with house money a little bit. They, really crapped the bed in the last month of the season, and now it's, hey, let's play loose and get out there and have fun and see what happens. And I think that's to your advantage when you get into the tournament. The teams that are tight, the teams that feel like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders, like a Gonzaga, they don't tend to succeed in this tournament. And it's because of the one-and-done nature, and it's 40 minutes, and throw it out and see what happens. And I think Syracuse's advantage is that. But I think from a talent level perspective, Oladipo and
Zeller
and Cody Zeller are better than anybody else on the floor. I don't question that at all. Cody Zeller's the best big man on the floor. Oladipo is the best guard on the floor.
Even guys like
Fair, you can throw him in that mix, but and that's the other thing too, is if you've got the best potential NBA guys on your team, you stand a good chance in the tournament. So I think both teams have a case to be made, but if I would have a tough time picking Indiana by more than 2 points in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's our system as much as our personnel, that I think is going to give Indiana the trouble. And the other thing we got going for us is we're playing on Georgetown's home court, where we should enjoy a nice home court advantage in Washington, D.C., I think, over Indiana. Orange Nation certainly, I think, it always turns out in D.C. And so, we got that going for us. It almost feels like we survived this draw from the West. Now we're coming back home, where we're going to have more of our fans. And, I can see us getting to Atlanta through D.C., but first things first, just Indiana. I think the home court advantage is going to help us there too.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate for Indiana, I guess, as a number 1 seed to have, they're number 1 in the East rather than number 1 in the Midwest. They'd have been able to play in Indianapolis. Louisville got that one instead, and that was, because they were the top number 1 seed. But
Indiana didn't earn it though. The way
Indiana
had some suspect losses late in the season, so.
no, by no means did Indiana deserve to get a number one seed over Louisville to get the Indianapolis site. But if I'm Indiana, I'm thinking it is a sort of potentially unfair situation that got to go to D.C. where it's a Big East city, and Syracuse probably will have 2/3 of that arena.
Yeah, even though it's nowhere near Syracuse, it's almost as close to Indiana. But Orange alumni going to be strong in D.C. for that one for sure. So. Just great to be still talking Syracuse hoops. Sweet 16 on the line as we go for the drive for our second national title. We're 4 games away from it now, and that's kind of exciting. We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors, and then we're going to come back with some great Orange trivia from Brad, and then we're going to just talk a little bit about some of the other games in the tournament, and we'll see you in about 60 seconds.
Attention Finger Lakes residents, have you been injured and deserve compensation? Call Madej, Maris, and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys. Your case deserves personal attention. At Madej, Maris, and Ricky, they know you by name, not just a number on a folder. Call the Finger Lakes Personal Injury Hotline at 315-568-0911. That's 315-568-0911. Madej, Maris, and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys.
The Newark Pilots. See tomorrow's Major League stars today. For more information, go to newarkpilots.com.
The most valuable things are always passed down from generation to generation. It's true for your family, and it's true for our bank. For more than 140 years at Generations Bank, we've greeted you by name, planned with you for the future, and stood by you when you needed a hand. It's what we do, and what we'll continue to do for generations into the future. We might look different now, but in the important ways, we're exactly like we've always been. Stop in your local branch or go to mygenbank.com.
And welcome back to the Upstate Orange podcast. I'm joined by Brad Connor via telephone in Clearwater, Florida, and our producer Jeremy Hunt, man in the booth. And this is the time of the show, Brad, where you challenge Verk and I, or whoever else may be in studio, with some trivia. And what do you got this week?
Yeah, I got a couple good ones for you guys. One I should have asked last week and saved it for this week. But see how many of the top 10 schools you can name that had the most NCAA tournament bids in history.
See how many of the top 10? Well, we'll go Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke. You're talking in 75 years of the NCAA tournament, right, Brad?
It's 75 years of the NCAA tournament, right?
Yeah, so we're going to go Kentucky, Duke, and North Carolina. Those 3, right?
Kentucky's first. They have 52 bids. UNC second with 44. Duke is tied for 6th, 37.
Yeah, they've gotten most of their accolades in later years.
True.
Geez, it gets tricky here. I'm going to say Syracuse. I'm going to bet you Syracuse is around 9th or 10th.
They're 8th on the list, 36 total.
Okay. Louisville?
Louisville is on the list. They're 5th, 39 bids.
UCLA?
UCLA is 3rd, 43. So it's first Kentucky, second UNC, 3rd UCLA. You got Louisville 5th. You don't have the 4th.
Don't have number 4, huh? Wonder if that's an old-timey school.
4th has got to be Kansas.
Oh, yeah, good call, Jerry.
Yep, that's it, Jerry. That's Kansas 4th. You're right. You got the top 5, and then 7th and 8th.
So we're missing 9 and 10.
You're missing 6 and 9 and 10.
Oh, we're missing 6. Notre Dame.
Notre Dame's a good one. Yeah, they're 9th, 33. That's one I don't think I would have guessed. I mean, but you go back into the 70s and 80s, and they're a stalwart. But since then they're in and out.
Oh boy, now it's going to get a little tricky. I don't think is there any other Big East schools that might contend for that? I don't think Georgetown's on that list. I don't think anybody like Houston's on that list. Or
Hey, Brad, I'm going to take a flyer on Western Kentucky.
Western Kentucky, they've had 23 bids, so they're not completely out of it, but no.
Huh.
Try, but
yeah,
no.
Good guess. I'm going conferences now. I'm thinking, well, what about a Michigan State?
Not a bad guess. They've had 27, so they are five wins short, or 5 bids short of the top 10.
Well, let's go Indiana then.
Indiana's a good one. They're on the list at 37, so they've got just as many as Duke and one ahead of Syracuse.
So now we just
That's
need
the top
number 10.
9.
We need number 10 now, right?
Yep.
I'm going to stick in the Big Ten and go Michigan.
No, Michigan is substantially down that list. 20 bids they've had in history. I mean, they had some dark years where before Beeline got there, they hadn't made the tournament in almost forever.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, now now is where you really rack up the bids because there's 64 teams going back. You know, prior to the 80s, you were talking about 32 and 16, I think, back in the day.
Yeah, you would have had to win your conference tournament to get in back before 1980-ish.
Yeah, well, Syracuse won their conference tournament in 80 and didn't get the bid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you remember there was a crazy story of 1974, I think it was, when Maryland and NC State were the two best teams in the country by far, and they played this epic ACC championship game that NC State won in double overtime or something. They ended up they win the championship. They beat UCLA's streak, and Maryland, by all accounts, had just as good a team, if not better, but lost the ACC final and then didn't even make the NCAA tournament because of it. There were no at-large.
Yeah, that's different world. Different world. Now everybody's in. Okay, let me get you with this one. How about Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, no. I don't know where they are on this list even.
Purdue?
They're quite a ways down. 19. Wisconsin got 19. Purdue, they're not at 25. They have 32 is the magic number. So these guys are pretty far down that list.
How about Cincinnati?
It's a Big East team.
Cincinnati. From our producer.
Not a bad guess. But Cincinnati's 27.
How about Maryland?
So since they're not a Big East team, they're probably not going to get it. But 23 from Maryland.
Okay. Geez, this one shouldn't be that tough, huh? How about Arizona?
Big East, man. Big East.
Oh, it's in the Big East. I'm sorry. Marquette.
No, not Marquette. It's not. Arizona's not a bad guess, though, because they have 29, so they're three bits shy.
How about Georgetown?
Wait. Marquette's down that list. Georgetown, not Georgetown. Georgetown, where the hell is Georgetown? They're not. Wow, Georgetown's not on this list very high at all.
It's. I bet you it's. Well, no, West Virginia's not in the Big East. Well, I guess I could say UConn, but yeah, I didn't think.
Not UConn. UConn's close. UConn would be the logical guess, but they're not. They've got 30. They're 2 shy. Marquette was 31, so they're 1 shy. Marquette's just short of this. Marquette's 11th on the list.
It's not DePaul. It's not St. John's.
No, not DePaul.
It's not. Is it St. John's?
It's Villanova.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Villanova, Jeremy Hunt.
Good job. Well, we did it.
That's a surprising one, Villanova.
It took a while, but we did it.
Yeah, they've got a lot of pretty rich history, Villanova, going back in the 70s and obviously in the 80s.
John Pannone.
Decent history since, Scotty Reynolds in that era.
Now, we got the first 9 pretty quick. It was that last one that gave us the trouble.
Yeah.
So.
I thought Villanova or Notre Dame would give you guys a harder time, but that was good. You guys did good on that one. All right. In the history of the Sweet 16, which current Big East team has the most Sweet 16 appearances in their history? So it doesn't necessarily have to be when they're Big East programs, but in their history, who would have the most Sweet 16 appearances?
Oh, that's got to be Louisville or Syracuse. Louisville or Syracuse. Let's go with Louisville.
Jeremy, agree with that?
Not really. Is it Syracuse or Louisville?
Syracuse and Louisville are 1-2.
Well,
in some order.
Oh, I gotcha.
I'm gonna go I'm gonna say Louisville. I'm sticking by my guns.
All right, Jeremy, agree?
I agree.
Correct. Louisville, 25 Sweet 16s.
It's impressive.
You second with 21 Sweet 16s, counting this year.
Yeah, but Boeheim can't coach. We need to fire him.
That's the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Who's third?
Who's third? Got to be UConn. And mostly
Tied for third with another team.
with Georgetown.
No, incorrect.
Certainly not Pittsburgh.
Certainly not.
And it can't possibly be Notre Dame. So
No.
you're looking at Villanova again. Villanova.
Villanova's also tied for third, and there's one other that's tied for third.
You're looking at Marquette, Cincinnati. I'm going to say Marquette.
Marquette?
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
it. Marquette
we're doing pretty good tonight.
and Villanova are all tied for third, 16 Sweet 16 appearances.
Very nice.
That was good. Sixth place, you mentioned Notre Dame. Notre Dame is right behind with 15 Sweet 16 appearances. But Notre Dame's last Sweet 16 appearance. Any idea?
Mike Bray wasn't coaching, or was he?
No, you're absolutely right.
Was it in the David Robinson team?
David Rivers?
David Rivers, yeah, David Rivers.
David Rivers? No, it's since then.
LaFonso Ellis?
Probably Pat Garrity played for this team.
Oh, so you're talking probably it's been close to 20 years.
No, I guess that's too far back. Troy? No, I don't even remember who was on this team.
Thomas, the point guard.
2003.
Oh, the year we won it.
Right. Last time Notre Dame made the Sweet 16, which is as solid as they've been, and you've got the type of guys that have come through there, and Hansbrough and Taryn Goody and all these guys that have been solid, great, or very good regular season players. Taryn Goody was a great college player. Hansbrough was Big East Player of the Year, and has never made the Sweet 16. more a comment on Mike Bray probably than anything else.
Yeah, it is. I mean, isn't it amazing him and Jamie Dixon, how poor they are? I mean, we sit here and criticize Boeheim, or a lot of Syracuse fans criticize Boeheim. Thank God that it's not Jamie Dixon or Mike Bray that's coaching Syracuse.
Jamie Dixon just signed another 10-year contract, I think.
Yeah, I feel bad for
contract.
Dixon. Yeah, he's till 2022. Good for him. I like Jamie Dixon overall. He's that Pitt program is solid, and they're always competitive, top 25 program. But it's unbelievable how you think 1 year they might break through, but
it really is. I mean, they lost that one Final Eight game against Pitt. That one that Scotty Reynolds went coast to coast and scored at the buzzer, and
yeah, a Big East matchup.
I think the only time Pitt's had any chance at even going to the Final Four.
How many Sweet 16s does Pitt have?
They have 7, so they're 11th.
Geez.
They're 11th on the list of 15 Big East programs.
That is unbelievable. If you take championships and wins, I bet you they're in the top 5. I mean, I'm sure they're in the top 5.
In terms of big play, yeah.
Yeah. But
so I'll run it down. You've got 6th place, as I said, Notre Dame. 7th was Cincinnati. He's got 13 Sweet 16s. A lot of them are ancient, long time ago, 60s and 70s.
Oscar Robinson.
Georgetown has 11 Sweet 16s. They're next on the list at 8th. 9th is St. John's, has 9 Sweet 16 appearances, but their last one was 99. That's going back a ways. Then you've got DePaul. DePaul also has 9. Not since 1987.
Wow, that is hard to believe. I guess a lot of people think of DePaul as this decrepit doormat program, which they are, but they really didn't come from that. They were great in the early 80s. I mean, top 5, top 10 team.
That's the only reason reason that they're even part of the Big East now and are going to be part of the new Big East. I mean, they're just it's all about the history of that program and what they think is the potential of being in Chicago. But hell, I'd rather have Loyola Chicago than I'd rather have DePaul.
Joey Meyer's not there anymore. Neither is his son, Joey Meyer Jr. Was it Joe? But they're both Joey Meyer. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. Those guys are bad. So yeah, DePaul has more than Pitt, believe it or not, because of the history of the DePaul program. But that's probably embarrassing for Pitt.
Sure.
And Providence has 5, and then it's Seton Hall has 4, not since 2000. Seton Hall been in the Sweet 16. Rutgers has 2. 1979 was the last time that Rutgers was in the Sweet 16.
But the RAC is such a hard place to play. Yeah, unbelievable.
And then the South Florida Bulls, that's actually right up the road from where I sit tonight. They've had they've had 0 Sweet 16 appearances.
Since they went D1, what, about 10 years ago? Has it been 10 years, you think?
Yeah, probably more than that. When they were in the tournament, I looked at their tournament history. They were in I think, 90 and 92. They were in the, I wasn't in Conference USA. It was whatever the predecessor of that conference was.
The Metro. Was it the Metro?
I think it might have been.
Which was a bad conference in the day. Louisville used to dominate the Metro back in the days of Purvis Ellison and company.
When I used to go to Natty games when I was little, they played in the Metro. They played against Louisville and played against Memphis, and they're Memphis State at the time. That was a pretty good league.
Well,
and,
got another one?
Yeah, one more. So in terms of the teams that are going to be in the Sweet 16, when was the last time that Michigan was in the Sweet 16 before this year? Throw a couple out of the last time ever for some of these Sweet 16 teams.
Geez, it's been a while for Michigan. I'd say it's been, I can't even remember. I'm just going to say 15 years as a general guess. I can't remember them.
I'm going to say 92, Brad.
Yeah, not a bad guess, Jerry. 94.
Mm.
So they were in the finals in 92 and 93 with the Fab Five.
Yep.
And then 94, Chris Webber went pro, and they still had, and I think Jalen Rose went pro too, but they still had Juwan Howard and Jimmy King, and they were Sweet 16 that year. In fact, they were Final 8 that year in 94, but couldn't get back to the Final 4, and that was it. So until this year, I mean, it's a pretty deep dry spell right there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, again, I have to keep bringing back to the point that, the Syracuse program, we've gotten there 4 of the last 5 years. Can you imagine since 94? You know how long ago that is? Well, I do. It's 19 years.
And Michigan is more of a football school than a basketball school, but still, I mean, it's a school that takes their athletics pretty seriously, and I can't imagine that they're very satisfied with the type of success they've had in the last 20.
Well, when we were growing up, even in the 80s, Michigan basketball was good. I can't remember who they had before Weber.
89.
Who are some of those guys they had before, Weber? They had Glenn Rice. They had another
Vaught, that team.
Ramil Robinson.
Yeah, there's another one against the Seton Hall teams, and they also had a big guy that was kind of Coleman's counterpart. I can't remember who that was. He was also a lefty. Chris Mills or Mills, something Mills. Remember him?
Yeah, I do. You're right. Yeah, they had some nice teams in the 80s. You're absolutely right.
Terry Mills it was, wasn't it?
I think you're right. Terry Mills. Sure.
Yeah, and then, the Fab Five came and went, and then they had that probation because of Ed Martin, the booster, that was paying for Weber and all these guys and buying them cars, and they just couldn't recover for years.
And here we are back in the Sweet 16 against Kansas, which they can beat. Okay, what else you got? Who else you got?
Oregon Ducks, when was the last time they were in the Sweet 16? Any idea?
Oh, my Lord.
A couple years, wasn't it? 4 or 5 years ago?
It wasn't as long ago as you might think. Yeah, you're right. 2007. That was good. But the last time they were in the Final Four was 1939.
Well, they're 2 wins away.
So good luck to the Oregon Ducks. Wichita State.
Probably hasn't been that long. I remember them making a little run to the Sweet 16 not too long ago. I'm just gonna throw out 2005.
Not a bad guess. 2006. I would have guessed all the way back to the Xavier McDaniel days, but they've had some success here and there. Now they haven't had they haven't been in the Final 8 since 1981, and then Final 4 was 65. But they've done a couple Sweet 16 appearances since then. How about LaSalle? LaSalle is playing right now. We don't have. There's about 10 minutes to go in that game.
Yep.
It's back and forth, but they have a chance at the Sweet 16. When was the last time you think LaSalle was in the Sweet 16?
They didn't even do it back in the Lionel Simmons days, I don't think. I'm going to say like 40 years. Maybe I'm wrong.
Jeremy, thoughts?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, 1955.
Wow. So more than that. 63.
They won it in 54, and then they were in the finals in 55, and that's literally the last time they made the Sweet 16. A guy named Tom Gola was a legendary player for them.
You know who else played for him? Bill Rafferty.
That's right.
Yep.
Another legendary LaSalle player. How about Creighton? The only other one that's worth talking about. Creighton's up 4-2 on Duke, by the way, right now.
Yeah, we're going to wrap this show up soon and get home and root for the Blue Jays. But I think with Creighton, I think it's been a while too. I don't remember them ever winning two. Even, I don't remember them being the Cinderella winning 2 games. I'm going to think that's going back 30, 40 years as well. You remember Jeremy them ever doing anything?
I'm going to say late 80s maybe.
Yeah, Jim's thinking along the right lines on this one. 74 was the last time Creighton was in the Sweet 16.
Yeah,
It's funny because they've had this reputation of a solid program, and they have been a solid program for a long time. But
yeah,
they get in the tournament, and they just I don't know, they don't have enough team, and they get picked in to be in this new Big East, and because they have this reputation of being a solid basketball program, which I guess solid is a relative kind of concept, and they draw great. They bring 19,000 into this arena in Omaha. That I guess that's kind of what they're going after, is someone who's on the rise rather than someone who's a solidified top program like Xavier. I mean, Xavier's a better example of somebody who's had very consistent success in the last 10 years, and Creighton I don't think really has.
Right.
But I think they probably got better potential to do so than a team like Richmond, who they could have brought in instead.
Yeah, now geography probably plays a little bit of a role, but that new Big East is gonna be a fun league. It's gonna be a great league. I mean, look at the Marquette Butler game in the tournament. I think that was the best game of the tournament. I don't want to jump ahead yet, Brad. So if we can start talking about that game.
Good.
So we're ready to move on from the trivia segment.
That's all I got.
Okay, that was awesome. I love it. A little timely Sweet 16 trivia, and I think we did okay.
Yeah, you guys were impressive. Yeah.
But I watched, like I say, that Cal UNLV game and the Syracuse Cal game, and the Syracuse Cal game came right off the heels of that Marquette Butler game. That Marquette Butler game was awesome. That was just an awesome game. As was I think the Indiana Temple game. But that Marquette Butler game's a future Big East matchup, and just what a great game. What a both teams going back and forth at each other. Go ahead.
Two just extraordinarily well coached teams, and both knew what they wanted to do with it. You had guys, very experienced guys that weren't rattled by the moment, which I think we've seen a lot of in the last 2-3 days, of guys that shoot stupid shots when they get down the end because they get freaked out because the NCAA tournament game's on the line. I mean, it's just the two teams making clutch plays, and you felt bad for the Butler kids because they played their hearts out, and I thought they were going to have that game.
And that's, like you say, going to be a Big East matchup next year. That's going to be a great conference. Other games that kind of were fun to watch or kind of caught my eye, I suppose, were the Kansas North Carolina game earlier today was kind of a weird one. Kansas comes out so flat and ends up running over North Carolina, but I guess that was kind of to be expected. Jeremy, what was your favorite game from the tournament so far?
It had to be that Florida Gulf Coast Georgetown game, probably.
Yeah, there you go. That was probably the one that most people would pick, just because that was the 2-15 upset, and sorry Georgetown, that had to happen. You had to lose to a school with 4 initials in its name that wasn't UCLA. FGCU. How about you, Brad? What was your favorite game of the tournament so far?
Both the ones we talked about, I really enjoyed. The Iowa State-Ohio State game earlier this afternoon. That was a great basketball game down to the end. I felt bad for the Iowa State guys. They really got an unlucky deal with they made the stop and got the rebound, ball went out of bounds off their hands, and then Ohio State got another chance and Kraft nailed the three. I mean, credit to him. Boy, he stepped up, and but Iowa State, they made a late 13-0 run or whatever it was to get back into it. I thought Ohio State was running away with it. Boy, it was just back and forth down the last 2 or 3 minutes. It was a tremendous game.
What about the charge call towards the end? It could have been an and one for Iowa State. I mean, Kraft's foot was clearly in the restricted area, and he was a help defender. So I thought that was a bad call. That swung the game.
Sometimes I agree with Charles Barkley on the commentary because Barkley called it right. He said, even though his toe was outside the line, his foot was in it. I mean,
right.
So if I'm hovering my foot over top of it, but I don't step down, does that mean I'm not in the restricted area? And that's kind of garbage. And Nance and Kellogg didn't describe it that way, but I thought Barkley had it right. It should have been. I mean, that's exactly why that rule is there, because of exactly what Kraft did, and he dived down in, and the Iowa State kid had no way to avoid him, and when he went to make his move to the basket, the kid wasn't even there. And all of a sudden, when he takes off, he is. You can't avoid that. That's not why the rule's in place, and that's why the restricted area is there. And
right.
I thought that was kind of crap.
Yeah, and then you even had to question if he was set, which is a whole other story. But that was a tough break for Iowa State, and I've been surprised. I guess you shouldn't be surprised. Any game can be close, but it's how a top seed like Ohio State or Kansas or any of these top seeds have been struggling so badly. It just kind of shows how wide open this tournament is. Louisville has looked strong. Honestly, Syracuse has looked strong. Arizona's looked strong. Michigan State has looked strong, but a lot of teams struggling. You wouldn't expect Iowa State to give Ohio State that type of game. But it gives me hope as a Syracuse fan.
There's more talent in this country than I think we get credit for. A team like Iowa State, we're on the East Coast. We don't see a whole lot of their games, and there's just a lot of good players out there. And I think that you don't see as much of the kind of the haves and have-nots and really where the talent disparity used to exist 10, 15, 20 years ago. There's just a lot of just talented kids that you go to Iowa State because you can't get the scholarship to Kansas or to Ohio State, and so Iowa State's deemed to be a second-tier school in that sense, but they're coachable and they get up to the level that when they've got 3 or 4 year guys, they can beat at Ohio State, and it's not a problem. And they, we see it's Florida Gulf Coast. These guys, who the hell would go to that school to play if you're a player?
But they look like the best team in the tournament.
Tried to get into Florida and didn't get there, and we try to get a scholarship to some of the ACC schools and couldn't
South
get it.
Florida,
So
Florida State.
They're great, and they come together and they rise to the occasion.
Those are kids that couldn't even go to Central Florida probably.
But they get coached up, and it says something for the ability of guys to coach the sort of the mid-tier college players up to a level where you can compete.
Yeah, no doubt.
Great.
The other thing, speaking of Barkley, he was saying that the Pac-10 was the most underrated conference in America. He may be right because they were so undervalued and they were so down in the eyes of the national media. But they got two teams in the Sweet 16. Oregon obviously got a really bad seed at 12, and Arizona looks like the team we thought they were going to be all year. Now, I don't see Oregon making a serious run, from here on out to the fight.
They play Louisville, forget it.
But Arizona, on the other hand, especially with the 1 seed gone in their bracket, and really, if Arizona beats Ohio State or whoever wins that game, they're going to play either Wichita or Ole Miss or LaSalle. So that Arizona-Ohio State game is almost like an Elite Eight game. Not to take anything away from those other teams, not that they couldn't win, but I think that Arizona-Ohio State game is an Elite Eight type of game where the winner of that's going to be in the Final Four. So
yeah, it would seem that way.
And then as far as the Big East, goes, Brad, we got Marquette, Syracuse, Louisville, 3 teams still alive. It was a brutal, weekend, I guess, for the Big East, or a brutal Thursday, Friday for the Big East, especially Friday. That was bad. But we got 3 in the Sweet 16, which is pretty solid for our last season. We'll see, how many we can advance to the Final Four. It could only be a max of 2. Louisville and then either Syracuse or Marquette, but it would be nice to see the Big East represent in the final season. What do you think the odds are that we see 2 Big East teams in Atlanta?
Yeah, I think Louisville will get there. I've thought that from the beginning, and I don't see anything that's told me otherwise so far. If I don't know, I think Miami's playing great. I think for them to lose either in this game against Illinois or against Marquette would be a sizable upset at this point. But Marquette, they know how to win. I mean, they played 2 close games. They should have lost to Davidson. They could have easily lost to Butler, and they pull them both out. I mean, these are teams that have experienced guys, know how to win, and Miami gets in a tough spot with Marquette. I would not be shocked at all if Marquette won that game, and then if Marquette plays Indiana, Marquette's obviously proven they can beat Syracuse, and if they beat Indiana, or if they play Indiana, I think they can easily win that game. And obviously Syracuse, we all know, they can beat Indiana, and that Marquette game that Syracuse played against them, that was right down the end, and Syracuse kind of let it get away from them. But that was at Marquette, play them on a neutral court, see what happens. But I mean, you could easily see either Syracuse or Marquette come out of the East, and I don't see any problem with Louisville coming out of the Midwest. So that will put 2 in the Final Four, and that'd be a good way to finish.
It would be. That's what I'm gonna pencil that in, because that's what I'd like to see happen. And then the up top bracket with Kansas, Michigan, the South, Kansas, Michigan, Florida, and Florida Gulf Coast. Right? It's Florida versus Florida Gulf Coast.
Yeah. That's a wild game. Who would have thought that, right?
Yeah. For a chance to go to the Elite Eight, Florida Gulf Coast. We talked about them all year because whenever we talked about Miami, we mentioned they lost to Florida Gulf Coast. But other than that, we didn't pay attention to them until Friday night when they beat Georgetown. Now they're one of the last 16 teams standing. And when I look at that South bracket, I'm not impressed with Kansas. I kind of like Florida out of that bracket. I kind of like Florida out of that bracket. I don't know. How about you, Brad?
Yeah, Kansas was. They were fortunate to survive Western Kentucky in the 116, and they sleepwalked through the first half of that Carolina game today, and all of a sudden kind of figured out what was going on. And Carolina, that's not a great Carolina team. We've talked about that all season, and they don't play defense, and it finally caught up with them in the second half of that game. And Kansas, they're it could have been them, could have been Gonzaga as far as who the weakest number 1 was. I've talked about them all season. I love Ben McLemore, and Withey has played great. And, if they can ride those 2 guys, they've got a good shot. But Florida, they're talented. And they'd love to get out and run. And I could see them, against Kansas. I could see Florida winning that game. No question about it. They've got the horses to contend with Kansas and get there. It would be a great battle. I'd love to see it.
Well, I think it's time to head home and catch some of that Duke game. And quick programming note, we're going to be off next week. I'm going to be in Florida, and Verk's going to be in Myrtle Beach. And, Brad, you're going to be back in Cincinnati, but there's not going to be anybody here in the studio to call you. So it's easier for us to do the show when you're on the road, I suppose, than when I'm on the road.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear me talk by myself about basketball for an hour.
So the plan is we're going to come back. If Syracuse happens to be playing in the championship game on Monday night, we're going to do our final show after they win that game. If something horrible happens and they lose before then, we're probably going to do our show on the Sunday night before the national title game. And, that show's either going to be, a celebratory show. I think at this point we're going to be, pretty happy with what this team accomplished overall. But we'll also take a look ahead to next year, and real quick before we go, I just can't get it out of my mind that C.J. Fair is going to go pro. It just seems so obvious. Everybody's talking about Carter Williams. It just seems so obvious that C.J. Fair is the most refined, NBA ready player on our roster, and I'd kind of be surprised if he came back for a senior year, even though nobody's talking about it. I mean, do you still, Brad, think that C.J. Fair is going to come back for a senior year?
because I think I feel like he's more of a player who recognizes how he has to get better. I think he's not about the highlight film. He's not about the quick and easy play. He's about hard work. He's about dedication. I just get the sense about him from what I've seen. Guys that value the mid-range jumper are guys that are college-ready players that I think he recognizes he's probably got some things to shore up. Now, could he be a draft pick? No question about it. I think the risk on him from the beginning was, does he have enough of an outside game at 6'8"? Can he shoot from the outside? And I think as the season's worn on, he's proven that without the shadow of a doubt. He's the best three-point shooter I think this team has, with the exception of Sutherland at this point in the season. And so I think his game is there, but I do feel like he just feels to me like one of these guys that kind of wants to see it through. Now, if they win the championship, would he be gone? Yeah, probably. I think at that point he would. But if they lose, even come up short, I could see him coming back for a senior year.
I hope so. It's amazing to me that nobody even kind of brings that up. They assume that Carter Williams is gone, and I haven't really taken a look at where these mock drafts are have CJ this year. I'd imagine it's probably late first round, but I'd like to have him back for our senior year. He's one of the good ones. But Brad, thanks again for joining us from down in Florida, and as I said, we'll be back. If you check you can check our Twitter feed or Facebook page for an announcement when that show does go live, or the front page at fingerlakes1.com on the web on the live webcast schedule. But until we meet again, let's go Orange. And thank you for joining us on the Upstate Orange podcast. You can subscribe to our feed on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or via RSS. Just look for the Upstate Hoops podcast. And for my co-host, Brad Connor, for Verk, who's not with us tonight, and our producer, Jeremy Hunt, I'm Jim Sinicropi. Keep it rolling, Syracuse, and we'll see you back here for one more show in 2 weeks.